Spread your legs and let me see. Lonely cowboy ordered the giant bride on Christmas Eve, but his. It was Christmas Eve, and the small town of Willow Creek was quiet. Snow covered the ground like a soft white blanket, and the wind whispered through the bare trees. Most people were inside their warm homes preparing for the holiday, but one house at the edge of town stood silent and lonely. That house belonged to Jake, a cowboy who had lived alone for many years. Jake was a tall man with strong hands and a weathered face. Life had taught him to be independent, but it had also left him with a heavy heart. Fast, he had lost his family long ago, and since then he had kept to himself, working on his ranch and rarely speaking to anyone in town. Christmas was always a quiet, lonely time for him. He would hang a few lights outside his home and cook a simple meal, but there was always an emptiness he could not fill. This year, the snow had fallen earlier than usual, making the town look like a postcard from another time. Jake sat by his fireplace, sipping a cup of coffee and watching the flames dance. He thought about the old Christmases he had once known, about laughter, music, and the warmth of family. Bah! A sigh escaped his lips as he remembered those days. Now his house was quiet, almost too quiet. Outside, the wind carried soft sounds, but Jake paid little attention. His mind wandered to his horses, his chores, and the never-ending work on the ranch. Yet deep down he hoped that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. He didn't know what he wished for, only that he felt the need for something, someone, to break the silence. As the night grew darker, a sudden noise outside caught Jake's attention. It was faint at first, like footsteps crunching in the snow, but it grew louder. He stood, his boots crunching against the wooden floor, and walked to the window. At first he saw nothing, only the white glow of the snow reflecting the moonlight. Then movement caught his eye. A figure appeared at the edge of his yard, tall and wrapped in a thick coat. Jake blinked, unsure if he was seeing things. Who would be outside at this hour, in the cold, on Christmas Eve? His heart began to beat faster. He quickly grabbed his coat and stepped outside, the snow crunching beneath him. The figure turned, revealing a young woman with a kind face and gentle eyes. She smiled, and it was a smile that seemed to warm the air around her, even in the cold night.
"Hello," she said softly.
Her voice was calm, almost musical.
"I hope I'm not disturbing you."
No, you're not. It's just unusual to see anyone out here tonight. The woman nodded. I was traveling and got lost in the snow. I saw your house and thought I might ask for help. My name is Emma. Jake looked at her carefully. There was something unusual about her, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. She seemed different from the people in town, not in a strange way, but in a way that made him feel curious and hopeful. Well, Emma, he said finally, come inside. It's cold out here, and you can warm yourself by the fire. She smiled again, and Jake noticed how her eyes seemed to light up in the dim glow of the porch light. As she stepped inside, the warmth of the room met her first, and she took a deep breath, relaxing. Jake closed the door behind her and watched as she shook off the snow from her coat. They sat by the fire, each with a cup of hot cocoa that Jake had quickly prepared. The room was small but cozy, filled with the faint scent of pine from the Christmas decorations he had put up earlier. They talked quietly at first, sharing stories about their lives. Emma told him she had been traveling to visit family, but the snowstorm had forced her to stop. He glances around in despair. Jake listened, fascinated by her stories and the way she spoke with kindness and curiosity. Hours passed like minutes. Jake found himself smiling more than he had in years. The loneliness that had weighed heavily on him seemed to lift. replaced by a feeling of connection he hadn't felt in a long time. Breath. He realized that sometimes life brought unexpected surprises when least expected. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, the room was filled with warmth, laughter, and the simple joy of human company. Jake felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this Christmas, he wouldn't be alone after all. As the night wore on, they prepared a simple dinner together, sharing food and stories by the fire. Jake couldn't help but feel grateful for this unexpected visitor. Emma seemed to bring light into his quiet home, and he realized that the world was bigger and more wonderful than he had remembered. By the time midnight arrived, the snow had covered everything in a thick blanket of white. Jake and Emma stepped outside to see the quiet town, the lights reflecting off the snow like tiny stars. For the first time in years, Jake felt truly alive, feeling the magic of Christmas in a way he hadn't expected. He looked at Emma, and she looked back with the same warmth in her eyes. In that moment, he knew that this Christmas Eve would be remembered forever, not because of gifts or decorations, but because of the unexpected friendship that had entered his life. And as they stood there watching the snow fall, Jake realized that sometimes the best surprises in life came when you least expected them. The next morning, the first light of Christmas Day peeked through the frost-covered windows of Jake's cozy home. Outside, the world sparkled with fresh snow, untouched and shining like a sea of diamonds. Jake woke up earlier than usual, not because he had plans, but because of the quiet excitement in his heart. Last night had been different. Something had shifted inside him. But he no longer felt the heavy weight of loneliness that had followed him for years.
He got up slowly, stretching his arms and feeling the stiffness in his muscles from the long winter night.
His house, normally quiet and still, now felt alive. He noticed little things, the soft sound of the wind, the faint creak of the wooden floorboards, even the smell of the fire that had died down overnight. Every detail seemed sharper, brighter, and more meaningful. Downstairs, he found Emma already awake. By the window, looking out at the snow-covered ranch, a warm scarf wrapped around her neck, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. Her eyes followed the gentle movements of the horses in the distance, and she seemed completely at peace.
Good morning, Jake said softly, not wanting to startle her.
Emma turned and smiled, her expression gentle and welcoming.
Good morning, Jake.
I hope I'm not disturbing your routine. Jake shook his head.
No, not at all. It's nice to see someone awake and cheerful this early.
They shared a quiet laugh. There was something comforting in the sound of it, something that made the house feel warmer than the fire ever could.
For the first time in years, Jake felt like he wasn't alone. Not just in the house, but in life. Breakfast was a simple affair. Jake prepared eggs, toast, and hot chocolate, and Emma helped by setting the table and sharing stories about her childhood Christmases. She told him about the little traditions her family had, like hanging handmade ornaments, baking sweet pastries, and singing songs by the fireplace. Jake listened, intrigued by the joy and love in her voice. It reminded him of times he had once known, but had long forgotten. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk outside. The air was crisp, and each breath filled their lungs with the freshness of winter. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked through the open fields, the sun reflecting off the icy surface. Jake showed Emma his ranch, pointing out the barns, the stables, and the fences he had built with his own hands.
I never realized how beautiful this place is, Emma said, her voice full of wonder. Even in the snow, it feels alive.
I guess I just got used to it sometimes. You stop seeing the beauty when you live in it every day. They reached the barn where his horses were kept. Jake fed them hay and brushed their coats, showing Emma how he took care of them. Pshh! She helped, laughing as one of the horses nuzzled her hand, curious and gentle. Watching her interact with the animals, Jake felt a warmth in his heart that had nothing to do with the fire in his house. After returning inside, they decided to make the most of the snowy day. Jake had a small collection of Christmas decorations tucked away in the closet, and together they unpacked lights, ornaments, and garlands. Emma helped hang them around the room, her creativity turning the house into a festive wonderland. Even Jake, who had never cared much for decorating, found himself enjoying the process. While they worked, they talked about life, dreams, and the simple joys that often went unnoticed. Emma had a way of asking questions that made Jake think, and she shared stories about people she had met during her travels. He realized that he had been living a small life focused only on his work, but there was so much more out there. By mid-afternoon, the house was sparkling with holiday cheer. The fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a warm glow over the room. They sat down with mugs of cocoa, admiring their handiwork. For the first time in years, Jake felt a sense of belonging. It wasn't just about having company. It was about sharing life with someone who understood and appreciated the world in a way that made everything seem brighter. The day passed slowly, filled with laughter, conversation, and quiet moments of reflection. Outside, the snow continued to fall, softening the edges of the world and creating a magical winter landscape. Inside, the warmth and companionship grew stronger with each passing hour. As evening approached, Jake and Emma prepared a small Christmas dinner. It was simple: roasted vegetables, bread, and a hearty stew, but they took joy in preparing it together. The act of cooking, side by side, sharing tasks, and talking about everything and nothing made the meal feel special. When they finally sat down to eat, Jake raised his mug in a small toast. "To unexpected friends and new beginnings," he said.
Emma smiled and clinked her mug against his.
"To new beginnings," she echoed. The meal was quiet and peaceful. They didn't need words for every moment. The presence of each other was enough. Jake realized that he had spent so many Christmases feeling the absence of family and friends, but now he understood that connections could appear in unexpected ways, even when you least expected them.
After dinner, they moved back to the fireplace. Jake took out a small guitar he had kept for years but rarely played.
Break. He strummed a few chords, and Emma sang softly along, her voice blending with the gentle music. The room seemed to glow not just from the fire, but from the happiness and shared moments between them. Night fell once again, and the world outside was silent, except for the soft whispers of the wind. Inside, the house was alive with warmth, laughter, and a newfound sense of hope. Jake looked at Emma and realized that the loneliness that had once defined his life was fading. In its place was a feeling of connection, of understanding, and of possibility. Before heading to bed, they sat by the window watching the snow continue to fall. The world seemed quiet, almost magical, as if Christmas itself had given them a gift beyond anything material. Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the company, but for the reminder that life could still surprise him in the most wonderful ways. Emma looked at him and smiled. "I think this is a Christmas I'll never forget," she said softly. Jake nodded. "Bray, neither will I."
It feels...
Breath. Good. Different. As they went to their rooms, the warmth of the day lingered in their hearts. They had shared not just a Christmas, but a connection that promised more adventures, laughter, and joy in the days to come. And in that quiet, snow-covered house on the edge of town, two lonely hearts had found comfort in each other's presence, proving that sometimes the most unexpected visitors could bring the greatest gifts. The morning after Christmas, the world outside Jake's house seemed even quieter than before. Snow had piled high overnight, covering the fields, fences, and barn rooftops in a thick, sparkling blanket. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold.
Jake woke early, as he had the day before, but today he felt a little restless.
The events of the previous day had filled him with warmth, but now a sense of anticipation buzzed quietly inside him. Downstairs, he found Emma already awake again, standing by the window and gazing at the horizon. She had a small notebook in her hands and she was scribbling something, occasionally pausing to look outside. Jake quietly poured himself a cup of coffee and joined her.
Good morning,
He said softly.
Emma turned and smiled, her eyes bright.
Good morning, Jake. I was just thinking about how peaceful it is here. It's like the world has stopped for a while. Jake nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. Britt. It's peaceful, yes, but there's something about this quiet that feels full of possibilities. Don't you think?
Emma laughed lightly.
I do. There's a lot of room to imagine things, to plan, or even just to notice things we usually overlook. Jake felt a pang of curiosity. For years, he had only focused on survival, work, and routine. Now, with Emma's presence, he felt inspired to see the world differently, even if it was just for a short while. After breakfast, they decided to venture further than the usual ranch walk. The snow was thick, but the air was crisp, and each breath seemed to fill them with new energy. Jake brought along a sled he had kept from his childhood, and Emma's eyes lit up when he suggested they use it. The idea of a simple sled ride seemed almost childish, but they both laughed at the thought. The two of them climbed a gentle slope near the edge of the property. Jake placed the sled at the top and motioned for Emma to sit. She hesitated for a moment, looking at the slope with a playful mixture of fear and excitement. "Are you sure this is safe?" she asked, smiling. Dispensing. Safe enough, and if we fall, it will be funny, not dangerous. Emma laughed and climbed onto the sled. Psh! Jake gave it a gentle push, and down she went, sliding across the snow with laughter ringing through the air. Jake followed, and soon both were sliding down together, rolling and laughing, snow sticking to their coats and hair. For a few hours they played in the snow, building small snow forts and throwing snowballs at each other. The world outside became a playground, and for a moment, the loneliness of winter vanished completely. After their fun in the snow, they returned to the house, cold but happy. Jake built a fire and they warmed themselves, sipping hot chocolate and watching the flames dance. Emma shared stories about the places she had visited during her travels, mountains, forests, and small towns with charming traditions. Jake listened, fascinated by the vastness of the world he had rarely experienced. As the afternoon wore on, the quietness of the house was interrupted by a soft knocking at the door.
Both of them looked at each other in surprise.
Visitors were rare in Willow Creek, especially during a snowstorm. Jake opened the door cautiously and found a small package on the porch, wrapped in brown paper and tied with a red ribbon. Psst! No one was around, and the tracks in the snow didn't match any person they had seen. Jake picked it up and brought it inside. Emma's curiosity got the better of her. "I wonder who it's from," she said, untying the ribbon carefully. Inside, they found a handmade ornament shaped like a star, with delicate carvings of snowflakes and tiny symbols they didn't recognize. Tucked underneath was a note that read simply, "May your days be filled with joy and unexpected friendships." Neither of them knew who could have left the gift, but somehow it felt personal, almost magical. Jake felt a warmth spreading in his chest, a feeling that this Christmas had become something extraordinary, desperate. "Someone wanted to send a little happiness," Emma said softly, turning the ornament over in her hands. "It's beautiful."
Yes. And it reminds me that even in quiet places, good things can happen unexpectedly.
The rest of the afternoon passed slowly, filled with gentle conversation, shared memories, and quiet reflection. They talked about their dreams, the things they had always wanted to do, and the small joys that made life meaningful. Jake realized that Emma had a way of helping him see his own life in a new light, encouraging him to notice what he had, rather than what he had lost. Perspective. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in warm oranges and purples, Jake suggested they go for a short ride in his horse-drawn sleigh. The horses were ready, their breath steaming in the cold air. Emma climbed in first, followed by Jake, and together they rode through the snow-covered fields. The sound of hooves in the snow, the gentle jingle of the sleigh bells, and the quiet beauty of the winter landscape made the moment feel almost timeless. They rode for hours, speaking in soft voices, laughing at small jokes, and sharing stories about their pasts. Emma told Jake about her family traditions, the simple joys of baking and decorating, and the value of kindness and curiosity. Jake shared memories of his childhood, of his parents, and of the lessons he had learned from a life spent largely alone. By the time they returned to the house, darkness had fallen, and the stars twinkled brightly in the clear night sky. The air was crisp, and the world seemed both infinite and intimate at the same time. They stepped inside, brushing off snow and lighting another fire to chase away the evening chill. Round. As they sat together, Emma's expression grew thoughtful. You know, Jake, I think the real magic of this Christmas isn't in the snow, the decorations, or even the gifts. It's in moments like this, when you connect with someone, when you see the world through new eyes, when you feel hope and joy without expecting them. Jake nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. I know what you mean. I haven't felt this alive in years. It's like something in me had been asleep and now it's waking up. Emma smiled gently. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of all. The rest of the night was quiet. They sat by the fire, sipping tea, talking in soft voices, and occasionally laughing at small jokes. But Jake realized that he had not only found a friend in Emma, but someone who inspired him to look forward to the future, instead of dwelling on the past. Before going to bed, they stepped outside again, wrapped in thick coats and scarves. The snow glistened under the moonlight, untouched and serene. They stood silently, appreciating the stillness of the world, the simple beauty of nature, and the joy of having someone to share it with.
Emma looked at Jake. I think this is the kind of Christmas that stays with you, not because of presents, but because of people and moments like this.
I think you're right, and I'm grateful that you came into my life when you did.
Emma's eyes softened. And I'm grateful I did.
It feels like something meant to be, even if we don't know why yet. As they returned inside and prepared for sleep, Jake felt a quiet sense of peace, breath. The snow-covered world outside was still and calm, and inside, the warmth of friendship and connection filled the house. He realized that sometimes the best gifts in life were not things you could hold or touch, but moments, feelings, and the people who made them possible. And as he drifted off to sleep, Jake knew that this Christmas had been unlike any other. It was a reminder that life could still surprise him, bring him joy, and open doors he never thought would exist. All he had to do was welcome it. And that, he thought with a smile, he certainly had.
The next morning, the sun rose gently over the snow-covered fields.
Its light sparkled on the white landscape like countless tiny diamonds, casting a peaceful glow over Jake's ranch. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the wind whispered softly through the trees. Inside the house, Jake woke with a feeling he had never experienced before, a sense of anticipation mixed with quiet happiness. Emma was already awake, standing near the window, wrapped in a thick scarf. She looked out over the snow with a soft smile on her face. Jake watched her for a moment, feeling a warmth in his heart. The past few days had changed him in ways he hadn't realized. Her presence had brought life back into the quiet house, and more importantly, into his own heart.
Good morning, Jake said, smiling as he poured himself a cup of coffee.
Emma turned and returned the smile.
Good morning, Jake.
Did you sleep well? I did, he said, better than I have in a long time. They shared a quiet moment, sipping their coffee and listening to the gentle sounds of the winter morning. Today felt special, not because of the snow, the holiday, or even the warm fire, but because of the connection they had built. Jake realized that this Christmas, unlike any other, had brought him something far more valuable than gifts or decorations: friendship, trust, and hope. After breakfast, they decided to take a long walk across the ranch. The snow was still fresh and untouched, and each step they took left crisp footprints behind. The air was cold but invigorating, and the world seemed to shimmer with possibilities. They laughed as they threw small snowballs at each other, their laughter echoing across the silent fields. As they walked, Jake spoke about his life, the years spent alone, the hardships of maintaining the ranch, and the quiet longing he had always felt during the holidays. Emma listened attentively, her presence calm and reassuring. She shared her own experiences too, speaking about travels, lessons learned from people she had met, and the joy she found in small moments.
You know, Jake, Emma said as they reached a frozen pond, I think life has a way of giving us exactly what we need when we need it.
But sometimes it's not the things we expect, but the people we meet along the way who make all the difference. Jake nodded, feeling the truth in her words. I never realized how much I had missed having someone to share life with. You've reminded me that there's more to happiness than just working and surviving. There's connection, kindness, and moments like this. Emma smiled, and for a moment the cold winter air seemed to warm around them. They paused by the pond, watching their reflections on the ice. The world was quiet, serene, and beautiful, and Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years.
Returning to the house, they decided to prepare a small Christmas feast together.
Jake had saved some ingredients, and Emma suggested a few simple recipes she had learned from her travels. Together they cooked, laughed, and shared stories. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of roasting vegetables, baked bread, and sweet spices. Jake realized that he enjoyed the act of cooking, not just the food itself, but the joy of creating something together. When the meal was ready, they sat down by the fire to eat. It was a modest spread, but it felt luxurious because of the company and the shared effort. They spoke about dreams for the future, places to visit, books to read, and even small plans for improving the ranch. The conversation flowed easily, and Jake felt an unfamiliar lightness in his heart. After dinner, Emma suggested they take a moment to write messages of gratitude. She brought out a notebook and asked Jake to join her. Breath. Sometimes, she said, writing down what we're thankful for helps us notice the beauty we might otherwise miss. Jake hesitated at first, unsure of what to write, but as he looked around at the cozy house, the glowing fire, and the cheerful presence of Emma, he felt a surge of gratitude. He wrote about the snow-covered fields, the warmth of the fire, the simple joys of food and laughter, and most importantly, the unexpected gift of friendship that Emma had brought into his life. Emma wrote, too, her words full of hope and reflection. She wrote about the kindness she had experienced, the beauty of the winter world, and the comfort of having someone who understood her. When they shared their notes, they smiled at each other, realizing that the simple act of expressing gratitude had brought them even closer.
As evening approached, Jake suggested they take one last walk outside before nightfall.
They bundled up in their thick coats, scarves, and gloves and stepped into the crisp winter air. The snow sparkled in the light of the setting sun, and the world felt almost magical. They walked slowly, enjoying the silence, the gentle crunch of snow beneath their boots, and the peace that seemed to surround them. Suddenly, Jake stopped and pointed to a small cluster of trees in the distance. Look, he said. There's a deer. Emma followed his gaze and saw a lone deer standing gracefully among the snow-covered branches. It watched them silently, its dark eyes calm and alert. For a long moment they simply observed, feeling a quiet connection with the natural world. The deer then turned and disappeared into the woods, leaving Jake and Emma with a sense of wonder and serenity. Returning to the house, they decided to end the day with one last Christmas tradition. Jake had an old guitar he rarely played, and Emma suggested they sing a few songs together. They sat by the fire, strumming chords, singing softly, and sharing laughter when they forgot the words or hit a wrong note. The music filled the room with warmth and joy, a perfect ending to a day that had been both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time.
As the night grew late, they settled into their chairs, sipping warm tea and watching the fire.
The snow continued to fall gently outside, covering the world in a quiet blanket of white. Jake realized that he no longer felt the loneliness that had defined so many of his Christmases. Instead, he felt hope, happiness, and the simple joy of being with someone who truly understood him. Emma looked at him and said softly, "I think this has been one of the best Christmases I've ever had, Brett. Not because of presents, but because of the moments we've shared, the kindness we've seen, and the connection we've found. I feel the same way. I never thought I'd have a Christmas like this."
You've reminded me that life can still surprise us, even when we think it can't. They shared a quiet smile, and for a long while neither spoke.
The fire crackled, the snow fell, and the world outside seemed both vast and intimate. Jake realized that the real gift of this Christmas wasn't something he could hold, but something he could feel. The warmth of friendship, the joy of shared experiences, and the hope for the days to come. Before going to bed, they stepped outside one last time, wrapped in thick coats and scarves. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a soft silver glow over the snow. The world was silent, serene, and beautiful. Jake took a deep breath, savoring the moment. He knew that the memories of this Christmas would stay with him forever, not because of what he had, but because of who he had shared it with. Emma turned to him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "Thank you, Jake, for welcoming me into your home, your life, and your heart." Jake smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. "Thank you, Emma, for reminding me that life can still be beautiful, even when we least expect it." They returned inside, feeling a sense of peace and contentment. That night, as they drifted off to sleep, the snow continued to fall softly outside, covering the world in quiet beauty. Inside, the house was filled with warmth, friendship, and hope. Jake realized that sometimes the most unexpected visitors brought the greatest gifts, not wrapped in paper, but carried in kindness, connection, and the moments shared together. And as they slept, the world outside remained silent and serene, a perfect reflection of the quiet joy and contentment that now filled Jake's home. He knew that this Christmas had changed him forever, not because of the snow, the decorations, or the fire, but because of the unexpected friendship and connection that had entered his life just when he needed it most.